Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers. I'm looking at this book today. It's a special report from Globe Law and Business called Effective Trusts, with the subtitle Minimising Disputes Through Design, Governance and Administration. And it's being written by two people, Todd D. Mayo and Kevin W. Rethore. I'm going to talk about the report in a minute, but what I'm going to say first of all is the Globe, obviously in connection with Business Families Insights, have produced a series of these reports which are extremely helpful. I'll just put it down for a moment and we'll look at that in a minute. I've given the title of our review of this special report an in-depth analysis of the current state of play on effective trusts. And that's basically what the book is about. Let's have a look at it first of all, and then you can, this report, it's not a long report, it only goes to 120 odd pages. There's all the usual blurb at the back about Globe, who are a fine publishing house. There's a detail about Globe at the back, and then at the back you've also got the bibliographical details about the authors. There's no index, but what you do have is a lot of information which is of some help. There is in fact a whole series of very, very small type notes right at the back, on page 122 onwards, just backing up the points that are being made. And there is of course a conclusion right at the end, part 7. We go to the front of the book, rather the report. You see there's the front page there. Then you've got the table of contents, and you've got an introduction, trends in trust disputes, common causes of trust disputes. Poor drafting is a classic, of course. Our approach here. Then 2, trust dispute avoidance through design, managing a settler's expectations. Always very important, because that's the basis of it if you think about it. Then you've got a whole series of other chapter headings all the way through, and basically trying to give advice, which is what they always do in these special reports, which will be of great help to practitioners. You see the end of it there, and then you've got acknowledgements from Todd and Kevin, and then an introduction. There we go. It starts off, trust disputes can be tremendously costly by any number of measures. Legal fees, the cost of hiring experts and other professional service providers, as well as opportunity costs and the emotional costs associated with this highly charged atmosphere that can pit family members against one another. I have to say, I've just literally in the last couple of weeks been dealing with one of these cases, and they are problematic. We just go through, you can see the various there are quotes from time to time to break the text up a little bit, which helps. You've got another quote there, and you can see it's quite a glossy A4 size publication, but it's got a lot of information and no footnotes, and there's no paragraph numbering. There are some numbers and so forth to find things, but it's a book which you can read through. And I think probably what we do have, which is useful too, case histories, always useful in these sets of circumstances. But what do I say in this short review? I've taken part of it from what's in the book and partly from what I do with my professional life. But what I say is this: we welcome this new first-class report from Globe Law and Business, written, as I say, by Todd Mayo and Kevin Rethore. The authors say trust disputes can be tremendously costly, and they're right, because the legal fees, hiring experts, lost opportunities, as well as the costs attendant with the often emotionally charged atmosphere can pit a family member against family member. I've said that before. I'll repeat it, because this sort of contentious rowing is really difficult. I do contentious probate as well, and that brings out the very worst in people, I'm afraid. And that's really why I think it's a statement that one should be aware of. And that's one of the reasons why, of course, you need a book like this, because you can read it and get the basis of what actually the subtext says: minimising disputes through design, governance and administration. And so I can't really keep that standing up because it will fall down, but the basis of it is trying to minimise the problem, because whether it's a dispute which goes to court or mediation, you've still got a lot of difficulties along the way. And therefore, despite the high toll, trust litigation continues to increase around the world. So it's a global issue, both in the number of matters being initiated and the amounts which rest in controversy. And as trust instruments become ever more increasingly an important vehicle in the management and transfer of wealth of various sizes, you can see the complexities are there for all to see. And of course we all know that one of the main reasons is careful fiscal planning because of the difficulties with taxation and various other matters. So preventing a fire is substantially less costly than fighting one. That's an interesting quote, isn't it, really, at the beginning? It's in the book. But it's absolutely right, because identifying and appreciating the potential causes of trust disputes plus puts settlers, trusts officials and beneficiaries in a much better position to prevent a dispute from developing or accelerating. And that's really the key to it, because I have seen quite a lot of cases. I'm just thinking of one I've just been looking at recently, where the problem you've got is the bad wording. Putting it in its simplest form, it's just not been thought out as well as it might be. And that's down to a lot of factors, but at the end of the day it's trying to carry out the settler's wishes. And of course this publication, as a special report, examines the causes of trust disputes and explores the steps that settlers, trustees, beneficiaries and others can take during each stage of the trust's life cycle. That's the design of the trust, execution, administration and termination. Now clearly this is more appropriate, I would submit, for solicitors or equivalent, but as a member of council I found it a very interesting book to read, because the point is to reduce the risk of sparking a dispute, because that's where you lose all the money. I mean, there are too many cases I've seen where after all the wrangling and the fighting there's nothing left. It's all gone. And for what reason? Because they hate each other. And that's really a very sad indictment. But the thing is, if we could get round that point, it might be a bit more constructive from everybody's point of view. Perhaps that's too ideal, but it's worth at least throwing in. Now, supported by real-world experience then, this special report and the input from leading international trust practitioners, including estate planners, a very important element, general counsel and experienced trust litigators, gives this book that extra gloss. And the report examines key concepts such as the following: thoughtful design of a trust's governance to incorporate flexibility and adaptability into a trust structure, and then the need for constructive communication and engagement between fiduciaries and beneficiaries, and then of course the practices, the processes, the procedures the trust officials should consider implementing in trust administration to make the thing work, and how trustees and beneficiaries can avoid adding fuel to the fire once a dispute arises. And alas, there will be disputes, because that is the name of the game, and you're talking sometimes of quite a lot of money. What we've got here, if I can just summarise it, is that the two writers of this special report, Mayo and Rethore, also review the benefits of involving different perspectives, including those of experienced trust litigators at various stages of the trust's life cycle. And they offer us, as the practitioner, an insight into the measures and approaches both fiduciaries and beneficiaries should really be starting to think about when the dispute first appears. Because one of the difficulties again is it's a problem. You don't necessarily think there's going to be a problem, and then suddenly it just blows up, and that's when the problem can be. It's filled, of course, with real world practitioner guidance throughout. I'd like to thank Globe for producing these reports. They're very helpful in terms of legal admin. Obviously they give us a very good perspective on what's going on and a good insight onto the issues of critical importance to the whole group of people involved, the trust officials, fiduciaries and beneficiaries. So I think it's an essential reading report, which should be in your library, and something that will assist you depending on how the case that you've got or the work that you've got goes. But I think these are very common sense approaches, and they're easy to read, and that's another thing that I think is helpful. The data publication of the new paperback from Globe is the 5th of November 2022. I'm recording this just at the end of the year. There's the small the report again. You can see it there. There's no spiders. There's a bit on the back, and I've taken the blurb from the back for the review and explained what we've got. Opening it in the middle, you've got trust disputes avoidance through design. So it's basically the structure of the trust and its and where it's going, which is very important. You do have things like commentaries from various experts. This one is from Nick Holland of McDermott, Will and Emery, a little quote giving some advice. And that advice is worth its weight in gold. So a big thank you to Sean O'Neill and Nicola Hornby at Globe Law, and of course to Todd and Kevin for producing an excellent work. Just one last point, and that is that I obviously am talking about this as a practitioner, but when we do actually study the law of trusts and the concepts, this area is never really looked at when it comes to the academic, even the practical stuff. It's for much later. So this particular report, I think, if anyone's planning on a career in this area, will find it very helpful indeed. Thank you to all. Bye-bye.